if it feels natural, then like drop in whatever you want. But the only motivation for this is for me to get to know people. That's literally it.
Yeah.
And then I think that authenticity of it then rings through, because this will be episode 15, and people pick up on it really good. I think because there isn't a sort of reason for it. I'm not trying to make money. I'm not trying to sell anything. It's literally just I'm talking to people, and then we might as well do a podcast.
Okay.
But I'll just sort of move this a little bit closer to you.
Yeah. Put it wherever you want.
Well, you're all good to go, Peaches? No?
Yeah, I'm sweet.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Beautiful. All three?
Yep.
Oh, you ripper.
Yep.
Okay, just talking to your microphone, mate.
Just talking into the microphone to Peachy.
Beautiful, we're on. Okay.
Darren Stephens, welcome to the Pondering Peach.
Yeah, thanks. Great being here with you, Peachy.
Oh mate, it's honestly it's a pleasure that I could have an opportunity to sit down and have a chat with you. I know we met nearly a month ago officially. I've known the boys for a couple of years now, and after having a chat with them last time I was here and learning more about what it is that you do, I was shook. I was really shook. I didn't realise how deep into the work that you were, and then to find out that you'd gone on this incredible journey through India and learning from different teachers and so on, I was just absolutely hooked. And as soon as I could have a chance to sit down and have a chat with you, then I would. So I'm super grateful that we could do it now.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm glad I could help, and it's great to be here. And it's great to see somebody like yourself that is on that path of wanting to create more success, not only for themselves, but for helping other people become more successful in their lives. And I think, that's one of the journeys that I guess I went on originally myself, was, starting out really young, left school when I was only 16 and started work. And then, by the time I was 18, I'd actually left the employer that I was working for at the time and started my own company. And then ever since then, I've run my own businesses, and I've had the privilege of traveling around the world into over 30 countries, spoken on stage in countries all around the world, and spoken to millions and millions of people. So that journey, I've got to learn what it takes to be successful, not just on a monetary point of view, but more on a mental point of view, spiritual point of view, and those things, have really grounded me and given me a great lifestyle, but also given me the opportunity to be able to help others as well on that same path, because I think, there's a couple of things when it comes to personal development is, there was a survey done actually, and there was a survey done on what most people want out of life. And most people said they wanted more success. Now, success can mean different things to different people. Some wanted more success from a health point of view. Some people wanted more success from a relationship point of view. They wanted more success from a business point of view or monetary point of view. And I think it's all of those things. I said, I think that all is success. However, I think it's one more thing as well, which is living life on your terms and being able to do what you want with who you want, when you want, however you want. Right. And to be able to do that, I think there's a few things that hold people back. Right. And I think there's two real key things that actually hold people back from being more successful in their life. And the first one is self-sabotage, right, which ultimately is fear. Fear of, not being successful, fear of not being good enough, fear of a whole range of things, right? So that's the first thing, self-sabotage, which is fear, which is a mindset. And the second thing is not being able to think big enough or be creative enough. They're the two biggest things that I think hold people back from being successful in life, on any level. And both of those things relate back to your mindset at the unconscious level, or some people will say subconscious level. So they're both the same, unconscious and subconscious. And as you know from our previous conversations, I have a strong influence in the field of hypnosis and have won many awards for being one of the world's fastest hypnotists. And that was one of the things that I discovered early on in my path, which was if I wanted to be more successful and grow wealth for myself in life and business and things I was doing, I had to work on myself first. Right, so I became my own student first. Was work on yourself, get your mind right, because that's where it all stems from, and that's some of the things that I've been doing now for many years.
Yeah, wow. There's so many things that I want to go into, but before we dig a little bit more, I'd like for you to take us back to what it was like for you when you were a kid. Mm-hmm. As early as you want to take us through your childhood and what stood out for you, what it was like, and then. Yeah, I'll leave you with that.
Well, I guess I grew up in a small country town called Mildura in Victoria, and it was a small population, and grew up in a very average family. My dad was a plumber, and he was the only breadwinner for the family, so we weren't very well off. We never went without anything, but we weren't rich by any means, and so that was my growing up. I guess I got my first taste of success when I was really young. I was only about 6-7 years old when I won a competition, actually. And it was a raffle, and I won an esky, some soft drinks, and an umbrella, and some deck chairs. Mm. And I was written up in the local paper. As winning this prize. Anyway, so that was my first taste of success. Going, wow, well, this is all right. I was, I won something and seen the success. But my next step really was when I was 13. What happened for me was my mum and dad used to travel down to Melbourne, to what we called the big city from a country town, to take my brother down to hospital. And my brother, he's a 10-year older than me, but at the time he was born with a hole in his heart. And he had to have a lot of open heart surgery. And it was really serious. A lot of children back then died from that surgery. And he was one of the lucky ones, and he survived. And so they had a lot of time back and forth to heart surgeons and specialists in Melbourne. And so my sister and I were left back at home while they were down in the big city. But they'd always bring us kids back something from the city, from being away. And one of the things they brought back for me was a set of rubber molds that made chess sets, because I was really creative as a kid, and as 13, I was always into art. That was my best subject at school, and crafts and things like that. And anyway, the mum and dad brought back these little rubber molds where you poured plaster into the mold and peeled the mold off, and it made little chess pieces. And so I made these chess sets. And anyway, so I made the chess set out of plaster, and then I painted them all and put it up in the house, and Mum had it up on the mantelpiece near our fireplace. And we had a friend of the family, local barber, who dropped in to say hello, and he was talking to my mum, and he'd seen the chess set up on the mantelpiece, and he said, "Oh, where did you buy that?" And she said, "Oh, I didn't buy it, actually Darren made it." And he said, "Oh, I'd love to get one of those." He said, "to put in my barber shop, because when people come in, they have to wait in a queue, and just wait in line to get their hair cut." So he said he would give them something to do while they were waiting, rather than just reading old newspapers. And he said, "Oh, could I buy one off him?" And so Mum asked me, would I make him one and he'll pay me for it? And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to." So anyway, to my great delight, he offered to pay me $20 to make this chess set. So I thought, oh, that's fantastic. As a 13-year-old, that was like winning Taslotto. And anyway, so I made this chess set up and gave it to him, and he paid me, and I thought I was Christmas on a stick. And anyway, he put it in the barbershop in the local town in Mildura, and people that came in started using it and playing it, and they all loved it. And they actually asked him, they said, "Oh, where did you buy it? Because I'd like one and I'll buy it off you." And he was Greek, the Greek barber. And anyway, so Con, his name was, Con said, he came back to Mum and he said, "Oh, look, I've got some people that would like to buy them off me in the shop." He said, "Would Darren make some more?" And so she asked me, and I'm still at school, right? And so I said, "Yeah, sure, another $20 would be fantastic." Well, he gave me an order for 5.
No way.
Right, straight off. Because anyway, so I thought, wow, this is amazing. So I got 5. So I like $100. It was huge because back then, it was early back in the 70s. My dad was only earning $250 a week as a plumber,
You're kidding.
full time working for the local council.
Wow.
Right, so $100 for me as a 13-year-old, that was like, huge money. And, my friends were doing paper rounds getting like 50 cents so for paper rounds. So this was huge. So anyway, I learned a lot of lessons from doing this because what happened was I thought, well, okay, I've got 5 and I'm still at school. I got to, make these molds and then I've got to hand paint them all. And so I thought, how can I speed up the production? So I went, okay, well, maybe I can buy pressure packs rather than hand painting them. I'll just spray them. So I did that. So that works, made it a lot faster. And my dad made me up a sort of a sand pit where I could put the molds in and I could do more at once and they'd, worked out, make it faster and things. And then I thought, well, what else could I do? Because the biggest problem I was having was the drying time, because once the plaster was set, then I could peel them off, but it took 2 or 3 days for them actually to dry out before you could paint them, otherwise the paint wouldn't stick to the plaster. So I thought, how can I speed this process up? So I thought, well, one, I'll use rapid set plaster. So Dad bought me some rapid set plaster. I tried that, but that actually nearly wrecked the molds because it set too quick and then I couldn't get them out fast enough before they set. So that didn't work. So I had to go back to the traditional way of doing it. But then what happened was back then, Mum and Dad had saved up for a microwave oven. That's when microwaves first came out. And because they were travelling back and forth to Melbourne to the hospital, they left food for us that we could unfreeze or defrost, or whoever was taking care of us could do that. So we had meals. And so they had this microwave. Well, I, being a naive 13-year-old, I went, oh, this Mum says this thing cooks things really quickly, this super fast microwave, right? So I go, okay, well, when Mum and Dad were out, I thought, well, I'll sneak in the house and I'll take the plaster, little chess pieces in, put them in the microwave and cook them in the microwave. So, like a kiln, right? But what I didn't realise, being naive as a 13-year-old, I put them in and I cranked the microwave up for 30 minutes, right? Thinking it's like an oven, but it's not, being a microwave. Well, of course, what happened was, literally within a few minutes, it exploded. Like the actual plaster blew up from the inside, because sometimes in plaster you have metal filings. And of course it reacted with the microwave. So it blew the smithereens out of the microwave, shattered the glass, blew the door off. And of course I was in big trouble then. So, because they saved up a lot of money to buy this thing. Anyway, so I got a lot of lessons out of all of that. And one of the things was that, well, firstly, that being creative can actually make you a lot of money, thinking outside the box and doing things. The other thing was, find other people to partner with that can help sell your products or services, right? So, I had the guy who's the retailer with his barbershop who was selling my chess pieces. So I never had to deal with anyone. I just sold them to him. Little did I find out later that he was selling them for $60 each. He was buying them off me for $20, and he was selling them inside the barbershop for $60 a set. Yeah, so anyway, so he was doing well because I ended up getting orders. I was getting 5 of these a week in the end, right? So I had a real production going as a 13-year-old. So anyway, so I got lots of business lessons out of that. And that really put me in great stead, so that when I started my own companies at 18, I already had lots of foundations of what it takes to be successful. That if something doesn't work, never see failure as failure, see it as an opportunity to change direction. Right? And because I've never met a person who's super successful that hasn't failed equally as much as they've succeeded. Me included. Like I've tried all sorts of things and failed at them, but that's what you grow and learn from. And so I never see failure as failure, only as an opportunity to grow, learn and succeed and to try a different way. So that was one of my earlier things from starting out so young.
How long did that last for, the selling chess sets?
Well, a couple
Months
of
or
years I was
years?
doing that, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
So, and then started work at 16, worked for a few years, bought a house at 17, and then left Mildura and moved to Melbourne and grew a company down there, and grew that from working in a garage to having 60 staff work for us.
What was
And a large factory, with 20,000 square feet factory.
so ballpark? How much do you reckon you made as a teenager selling chess sets? And did you expand your merchandise to anything else?
No, it was only chess sets. Look, I wouldn't know. Certainly, it'd be a couple of $1,000 at least, like in doing it at that time as a young kid.
And did you what did you do with all your profits? You obviously made it easier so that you could do them faster, do it better. But then, were you just saving all of your money? Were you splurging a little
No, I was
bit,
a typical 13-year-old and 16, and as I got older, I spent every cent of it.
Yep.
Like buying motorbike, I had motorbikes, I had air rifles, all the things that you spend money on. And then as I got older, and even when I started work, when I bought my first house, I was only 17, and that came from learning from people that were already more successful or older than me. I would, when I worked at a jeweler shop, it was where I started as an apprentice engraver. I asked the people, I said, what would you do differently? When you're first, if you were my age now, what would you do differently? Yeah. And because they were older, and one of the guys said, I'd buy houses and get into real estate. He said, I should have done it when I was younger, and he didn't. He'd done it when he's older and was doing well. And he said, you want to buy yourself a house early. So I went, okay, I'll go and do that. So I looked around to buy a house, found a place, put an offer in on it. Of course, then when I went to borrow the money from the bank said, no way. You've only just got, started work. You're only 17. You have no real financial track record. You have no savings. Yeah. We won't give you any money. And so I went back to the work and said, I've put an offer on a house subject to finance, but I got knocked back from the bank. And he said, well, just go to another one. So I went to another bank, and then I went to another bank and another bank, and they all knocked me back, even though I had a job, but I wasn't earning a huge amount at that age. And so I eventually, he said, just keep trying until you get someone that says yes. So it was another lesson I got, being super persistent. Yeah. So I went to a building society, actually, that just opened up, a brand new building society in Mildura called Challenge Bank, or Hotham Bank it was at the time. And they were offering loans at 18% interest.
Oh, days.
So I got one at 18% because they were offering to do 95% loan to the valuation of the property, and the property came up to value, so they lent me the money, and I got the first home buyers grant back then, which was like $7,000, which was enough money for me to be able to then do it and get the house. And then I went and got a second job as a barman, working at night time. So I'd do my day job, and then I worked 2 jobs actually at one stage at night time. I'd work as a barman at a restaurant for 3 nights a week, and then 2 nights a week I drove taxis. All right, to get enough income in so that by the time I was due to settle on the property, I had money there to be able to get the property. So I did that, and then when I got the house, I moved out and moved into the house, and I rented one of the bedrooms out to a mate of mine, which actually was enough money to pay my mortgage, just the rent that I was getting from the other person. So I got a house and I got to live there effectively free. Yeah. So that was what I did when I was 17. Wow. And that was some of my childhood background.
There's some pretty powerful lessons for a teenager. You said you had an older brother.
Yeah, older brother. He was worked at a radio station, and he was super smart in electronics and things like that. So that's what he did.
Did he have any entrepreneurial sort of blood in him?
No, I got that all from my dad. My dad was more of a, even though he'd always worked for himself or worked for somebody as a plumber, he was always out to create a deal or do something. He was more entrepreneurial, I guess, from that side. But really, that came from, I guess, my own upbringing.
Yeah.
My brother wasn't that entrepreneurial like that, and nor was my sister. That was more me. And then, of course, when I did start out like that, I then went to go, well, there's so much I don't know when I started out running my own businesses. So that's when I realised I need to go and get more knowledge. So I started going to lots of seminars.
What was the first one you went to? How did you discover it?
It was actually through some sort of advertisement that was around, and I looked up, I wanted to learn about sales. So one of the first seminars I went to was a guy by the name of Tom Hopkins. He's an American sales trainer, and he was out in Australia running an event, and I went to the event, and at the time he was offering, he taught people about sales, and it was amazing. I watched him make about $100,000 from stage just from doing his sales process, selling his products and services. And I remember buying his whole collection that he had, and it was $22,000 to buy this sales training program, and it was on video and cassettes back then. And he broke it down. This was a part of his sales techniques. He said, well, the amount of this, if you spread it out over 2 years, it works out, and broke it right down to a can of Coke and a chocolate bar.
Yep.
Is what it was really going to cost you a day. He said, so if you can do without that can of Coke and a chocolate bar, you could invest into this program, and it's going to repay you tenfold because of the knowledge you'll get. And so I bought it. And at the time, I certainly didn't have the money, so I went and put it all on a credit card and bought the program. And it really did. It had a huge impact. It changed how I approached people, how I did sales, because I got to learn a different way of building relationships and a different language skill. And it really did have a huge impact on my life. So that got me hooked onto seminars. So then I went to another seminar. I went to one on marketing, and by a guy by the name of Jay Abraham, discovered all his philosophies around marketing, and then went on to Tony Robbins. And literally there was every single month I was going to a seminar on personal development to grow my mind.
Wow.
So
what do you think was the one that stood out the most when you were in the personal development junkie stage of your life?
So, well, different things. Jay Abraham, from a marketing point of view, definitely changed how I view looking and solving problems for people from a marketing point of view. He was definitely the forefront for me there. From a mindset point of view, it was definitely probably Tony Robbins on seeing how your mind has so much to do with how successful you are, just the way you think and the questions you ask yourself or your mind. And then seeing Tony, I went, well, who did Tony learn from? Because one of the things he said really stuck with me. He says, always try and go to the source, he said, of who had the knowledge originally. And that way you'll be able to distill it down even more effectively. And I went, well, Tony's amazing and huge respect for him. But who did he learn from? Well, then I found out who he learnt from, and then I went directly to those people and learnt directly from them. And some of them are passed away now. But that was what I did. And I spent a huge amount of every cent I had at the time was in development of myself. Because what I found was the more I spent on my mind, it repaid me in kind financially, because I was able to grow businesses or grow my own wealth from that. So I seen it as a huge investment for my future.
Take me back to the first company that you started. What was the transition from working a job, realizing that you don't want to do that, and then how you came up with the idea for the company and then went into it?
Well, the job I was in originally was as an engraver at a jewellery shop, and at the time they offered me to become a partner. They didn't want me to leave, but I decided I was going to move to Melbourne, so I was going to leave. And then when I moved to Melbourne, I looked around to get another job in the same field, and there was an opening at this one place in Mount Waverley where there was a guy who had a small engraving business, and he had taken the business, he was running the business, but then he'd been offered a really senior position with a company called NZ, and he was going to have to leave the business and just let it sort of sit there and do nothing. And he was looking for someone to sort of take it on. So I said, okay, well, I'll come and work for you and I'll run the business. So I got to run his business out of a garage in Melbourne and grow the business. And after 12 months of sort of working there, growing the business, I'd go out, do sales during the day, come back later that day, then do the work. So I was sort of wearing multiple hats. And anyway, I grew the business over that 12 months quite significantly. And he was so impressed. He said to me, and he was a great guy, Gary Parker, he said to me, oh, look, I'm so impressed with what you've done with the business, rather than, because it would have folded if someone hadn't have taken it on, and you've really actually doubled the size of it. He said, I'd like to offer to give it to you at a really good rate, just basically the cost of the machinery that we had, for engraving machines and the equipment. He said, and I'll sell you the business. He said, and so he said, really, you're only paying for the cost of the equipment. And so I said, yeah, okay, I'm in. So I bought the equipment, moved out of the garage into my own garage, and then continued to grow that business. And we went from one employee to another. And as I was growing it and building the relationships with the companies that I was working with, doing their engraving, I noticed that, well, engraving led to signage, and then signage, led to shop fitting, and all these other elements that sort of went hand in hand. And so I grew the business from doing engraving into signage, and then signage became into all sorts of signage, from large billboard signs to illuminated signs on major buildings, and then it grew into shop fitting. So and we had then a big warehouse. We had 20,000 square foot with a whole stack of staff doing everything from cabinet making, shop fitting, spray painting, electrical. We did everything all in-house. And we were turning over around 12 million a year. And I was still pretty young at that stage. So I'd become a multimillionaire by the age of 29. And thought, life was pretty grand at that stage. So, but I continued growing and learning, because as I grew staff, then that grows sort of headaches as well, unless you know how to manage people and I didn't. So I had to continue to go on courses and to grow myself and put in the right people as well and build teams of people and things like that. So that was part of my journey. And
so you were 18 when you started that company?
Yeah.
And then how old were you? Did you sell it, or what happened? What was
we sold out. Yeah. So we sold that, and then just did straight consulting to other people to help grow their businesses and brands. So we did business consulting and mentoring for other people.
Yeah, wow.
So, and, because all the things that I'd learnt from growing my own business and having that many staff and things like that, I learned a lot of things along the way. So then I took those principles that I'd learnt and was able to help other manufacturers and other businesses grow their brands and business. So,
how old were you when you sold it?
I was only in my 20s, or maybe I was maybe 30, something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe. And then since then I've had other companies where I've grown. We grew a whole thing with the Mars Venus Institute, and then from there I started a publishing company, which we grew and ran for 15 years as a publishing company, publishing books all around the world. And then I sold that company and we exited that, and then sort of semi-retired, and then kept on doing what we love with personal development, with hypnosis and mindset stuff. And we have a mastermind group, the Entrepreneurs Inner Circle, so we run that. And we also have a real estate company now. So
Well, yeah.
that sort of brings you up to date to where we are.
It's a very quick overview on the huge. It feels like you've lived lifetimes in this lifetime.
Yeah, well. That's been a part of the great thing is being able to also be a speaker and marketer and help other people grow their brands or businesses, or help people from a personal development point of view. It's taken us around the world. We've got to travel to a lot of countries, see lots of cultures, see lots of types of businesses, mentor different types of people, from presidents to members of the royal family have been clients of ours, and see lots of different things, and everyone is still the same. Whether you're from royalty in a different country to you and me sitting here, we're all the same. You know, we all have needs. We want to be loved. We want to, connect. You want all those same things. So, so it comes back to that. Is being able to feel centered, loved, and be connected.
In that period of your life from 18 to 30, when you're turning this company that was started off as an engraving business in a garage to then doing $12 million a year, maybe more, what were the pinnacle moments on that journey? And I'm thinking more from a hardship perspective that taught you big lessons.
Yeah, plenty of lessons. One of the lessons, I guess, from a marketing point of view was I had an interesting course. I went to a course which was by a marketing guy by the name of Al Rees, and he wrote the book called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. Great book, and you can still get it today, even on audio and things like that. And he said, listen, rather than being sort of everything to everyone, and like at the time we were a shop fitting company, maybe one of 6,000 shop fitters in Melbourne, and we had a lot of staff and doing sort of all sorts of work. And he said to me, you want to be like the sun. He said, at the sun, he said, the sun beams down on you, can warm you up, and that's wonderful. But he said, if you put the sun under a magnifying glass, it shines like a laser beam, and it'll cut through steel, right? Because you've taken the focus from this being this big, big sun shining on everything to a laser beam. Yes. And when you narrow your focus like a laser beam, then you achieve so much more. You can cut through the clutter and you'll get a lot better results. And I went, wow, okay, how do I apply that to the business? So we then went, okay, we were doing shop fitting for sort of any type of business. And we went, well, if we narrowed the focus, he said, because then you can become a category leader and a brand leader in a particular niche. So rather than being one of 6,000 shop fitters, you can be the number one shop fitting company. It's the only choice for people to go to for a particular category. So you create your own category within a category is what they were saying. And I went, okay, rather than just being overall general shop fitters and doing cabinet makery and signage, if we narrowed our focus, what would that be? What would the category be? And we went, the toy industry, because people will always spend money on their kids or toys, no matter whether there's a recession on or not, you're still going to buy stuff for your kids. And so we went, okay, well, let's become the number one shop fitting company for the toy industry, right? So we narrowed the focus. So a really interesting thing happened was we then all of a sudden started rejecting any work that wasn't to do with the toy industry or that market. And we then had a clear target. Okay, we're only going after companies like Toys R Us, Myers, Mattel, all the toy industries, right? So then we weren't worried about anyone else. We just went there, and we were able to produce things that sort of showed that, okay, we're a specialist now in this field, right? So we're the only, you can go to anyone, but if you go to us, this is our whole focus, is your industry. So we knew that industry then backwards, and we become, within 12 months, we were the number one in that field. So we had clients like Kmart, Toys R Us, Walt Disney Company. We did work for Walt Disney all around the world. We flew all over the world doing their stuff. And we became the number one. Even Disney Corporation flew out from America, came out to our factory in Melbourne, and seen our work and seen how we set everything up and everything else. And we got stores in other countries to do for them. So that what happened was, from that, we were able to reduce our staff, right? Because we didn't have to now do everything for everyone. We had a real clear focus. So our overheads halved, and our profits went up. Wow. So our turnover dropped, but our profits actually went up.
Yeah.
So we went from like 12 million down to like 8 million, but made way more money. So it was a really interesting lesson. So that was a big turning point. The other thing that I guess I learnt is that you have to put in good systems in a business, because some people will try and take advantage of you. And we had that. We had people embezzle money. We had people do all sorts of things like that. When you're employing a lot of people, not everyone has the same ethics or the same, accountability as yourself. And so they were big lessons, because I always used to treat people just like I would. And that's a mistake. And I made mistakes like that a lot in my early stages, where I would employ someone based on their personality, or how I connected with them, right? Well, that's actually a mistake, because you want different personalities for different roles in your business. And I'll give you a great example that was an expensive lesson for me. Was I employed someone that was bubbly, got on really well with him, as an estimator for our company at the time, and where they would do all the quoting and estimate what costs were to do a job. And you need someone that's actually really detailed and's got good analytic skills for that area. And this person didn't, because he was more like me, and I was more entrepreneurial, and I wasn't good at those things. And anyway, so I employed him on personality rather than skill set. And of course, the first job that we did was a major one for Disney, that he'd estimated, and we were doing all this work overseas. And it ended up, we were actually out of pocket about $200,000. That's how much we lost, because he hadn't added all the screws up and all the different things that were going to go. He went, I'll just allow this for it, rather than actually saying, we're going to use 10,000 screws at $1 each, and doing it accurately, like somebody that had that detail would have done, right? And that was a mistake I learned, Actually, you need different types of personalities for different roles. Think about it like this. If you had somebody who was just, she'll be right, sort of casual, blah, 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 flying an aeroplane, and they might hop on the plane and go, we've got half a tank of fuel, we should make it to Melbourne, from Brisbane, right? You don't want that type of person flying the plane. You want the person that's flying the plane that's going to go, okay, well, this plane doesn't take off unless we've checked how much fuel, we've done the calculations of how much the plane's going to use in fuel to get to Melbourne, and check all the safety things before they take off, right? So you need different personalities with different skill sets for each part of what you do in your business, if you're running a business.
It makes so much sense. That makes a lot of sense, because you would understand if you want to have people on your team that you get along with and so on and so forth. It seems like a natural thing that humans would do. But then obviously you learn the lesson of falling $200,000 short for an overseas job.
So there's a lot to it. You want to know that people are going to get along, and when we employ people, we actually now do it based on their unconscious or subconscious values and beliefs, so that we know that there's going to be an alignment with ours, because then they're going to fit into the organisation.
Do you remember the first time that you learned about beliefs and values?
Yeah, definitely.
Was that a Tony Robbins?
Yeah, it was a Tony Robbins event. Yeah.
And
so,
what do you remember what you took away from that? Because I think back to when I went to Empower You for the first time, which is like the Aussie teenager version of Tony Robbins.
Which is great. Yeah.
And whilst I'd been familiar with a lot of the concepts beforehand, seeing it explained in that way was massive for me. It was absolutely massive. And so what was your takeaways from an event like Tony Robbins, where he goes really deep into that world?
Well, for me, I think I've probably seen a lot of things. You get, I think, when you look at that, and when you're prepared to look at yourself, you get to see, well, okay, what are my flaws, or what are the things that hold me back? You know, like, none of us are perfect, and we're all a work in progress. You know, even though I've done lots of this sort of work, I still make mistakes every day, and that's just a part of ongoing learning. And I think probably some of the takeaways for me was actually getting to know who I really was, and what were my drivers, what things were important to me, and you know what my strengths were, and what my weaknesses were. And at least if you can identify your strengths and weaknesses, I have a belief is, don't focus so much on your weaknesses, because you can outsource those to somebody else to do if you're not good at it. Like, in my relationship, Jackie, my wife, she is amazing when it comes to detail and finances and doing all those things, way better than me, right? Like, by a mile. And my strength is being able to really think outside the box, think creatively, big picture, and we're a perfect match because we complement each other. And, you know, my weaknesses are her strengths. And so, you know, together when we work on things, we're so much better. And she certainly makes me a better person, you know, just because of the knowledge and the stuff she can impart to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, like the yin and the yang.
Yeah, exactly. There really is, yeah. And I think that's the other thing is, there's more to life. I think, you know, some of the things that I've learnt as I've travelled and gone to places like India and things, there is an energy field out there that whether you can see it or not see it, it doesn't matter. It's there. And the more you learn about it and can tap into that, the more you can make it work for you. You know, and you know, everyone knows, like, if you go into a room and people have been fighting, you can feel the tension in the air, even though they might be acting all fine. You can sense it, right? You feel it in your body, and that's a real thing, you know. So you want to hang out with positive people, because that will rub off on you, you know, and your energy will be more uplifted and you'll achieve more. But if you're with people that are negative, then it's going to pull you down. Right. And so you've got to do things to protect your mindset. You know, occasionally, you know, I watch the news, but most of the time I don't, because it's full of negativity or crap, you know, and it's hyped up, you know, it's never really what's really happening. And, but you have to protect your mind, you know, and what you feed your mind is super important. Absolutely. Because that affects your values, your beliefs, your immune system, you know, everything that goes on.
It's funny, I used to be really hesitant when I would talk about energy, until I realised that we use Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and we trust that, and we've got no problems in using these things. But then this concept of us being connected to something that we can't see or measure as such seems like woo-woo. But then, I mean, you
know what woo-woo stands for?
Oh, please tell me.
Window of opportunity.
Wow.
So some people will see that as woo-woo, but the reality is it's scientific. You know, it's quantum physics, quantum dynamics.
Yeah, and, absolutely.
And, you know, science has measured it, so it's not woo-woo. It's actually real. And as a matter of fact, like the Beatles, John Lennon stopped playing in the band, the Beatles. One of the reasons the band split up was because he would get sick and be vomiting and throwing up before they'd go on stage. And one of the reasons was he had so much anxiety because of the energy that's being pushed onto them by the audience of thousands and thousands of adoring fans. But that actually has an impact, right? You've got all this energy being forced upon you, whether you like it or not, right? And as a presenter on stage, Tony Robbins, I'll give you an example. Tony used to, every time he'd get off stage, he'd have to have a chiropractor come and readjust his whole body and back, because he's on stage, he's putting out a lot of energy, but he's also getting all the energy thrown at him by his audience, right? Thousands of people, right? Now that energy is thrust upon you. It's going into your body, right? So it would put his body out of alignment. Wow. Right? And he'd have to have a permanent chiropractor that travelled with him to readjust him every time. He still does.
Yeah,
right, because of that. And a lot of Hollywood actors, I've had the privilege of working and consulting with them and actually helping them with their mindsets and challenges, because they go through the same thing. Because they're putting themselves out there as an actor, then they take on that persona or whatever, or then there's all these fans that go, oh, wow, it's Tom Cruise or it's this person or whatever. Then they start to feel a little insecure because they go, well, what happens if they see who I really am? I'm just another guy, or I'm just another woman, nothing special, but they're put up on a pedestal because of what they've done, right? And so all of a sudden then their own insecurities crop up. And I've worked with a number of Hollywood people that have had fears and anxiety attacks because they go, well, if I go out in public and someone sees me, or if I, aren't dressed properly, are they going to put something in the paper about me or negative or whatever? And they get all insecure about themselves because they haven't been able to deal with that energy that's thrust upon them. Right, so part of that is helping them actually understand and have more balance, and to be able to take negative energy that's put on you, or any even positive energy if it's too much, and release it so that you're actually more balanced and centered.
Absolutely. It's funny, I remember us having a conversation where you were explaining this to me last time I was visiting, and I had my first taste of being conscious of that last week when I did my first expo representing the company, and I did a talk in front of it was like 15 people, but I had a lot of my family there. And so I got a lot of love from them. I got a lot of love from other people who I'd never met before. And then I was on this stall all day from 10 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. talking to all sorts of people, getting a lot of energy. And then for the next few days, I just felt off. I felt flat. And I realized I was probably because I was receiving all of this energy, and then I didn't have the practices in place at that time to be able to reinvest that energy or to release some of it. I sort of just kept going without being conscious of it. And I remembered the conversation that we had, and I was like, oh, okay, it's all good. It makes sense. No stress. Just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people that go to big events, I mean, there's a thing, it's a bit like they call it post-event blues, because you've been in environment, you will have experienced it obviously with Tomorrow's Youth, right? You go there, you're with positive people, you're having a great time, the energy's really high, and then you leave that environment that was so loving, or the energy is really powerful, and then you go back into your normal environment and it's not the same. And you go through a sense of loss.
Yes.
It's like, wow, I don't feel that same connection anymore.
Absolutely.
And you almost go through almost like a little bit of feeling depressed.
Yeah.
Because you've lost
really
that sense. And that's what happens and that's why it's important that if you've got people around you, you foster that positivity and that, one thing we've been lucky with the people that when we've had a small team, we still keep in contact with our staff that no longer work for us, but because we had such a great positive relationship, that went beyond them being an employee. They were like part of our family, right? Because we kept that positivity and connection up. And so it's important that who you spend time with is who you become like. So, having good people around you is definitely important.
Well, it's really it, and it makes me think of that quote: "Your network is your net worth." And when I say worth, and I talk about wealth, I don't mean money. Yes, it's a piece of that pie, but it's so much bigger than that. It's so much bigger than that, and so it makes so much sense that you're around people who are positive. You're around people who are going to bring out the best in you. Then that's going to make you feel the best, because It's like, the yin and the yang, the positive and the negative. I teach this at my events, and I'll talk about the difference between positive and negative, and that being a charge on a scale, and then good or bad being judgments that we give meaning to, and then using that on the topic of emotions, and separating this idea of judgment and calling emotions good or bad, and just looking at it for what they are. This one's a positively charged emotion, this one's a negatively charged emotion. So it's not bad, it's just basic mathematics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so yeah, totally agree with you.
Yeah, and so when you think about energy and you're thinking about what you were learning when it comes to values and beliefs and so on with Tony Robbins, was he the one that got you interested in the NLP? When did that part of your journey start?
Yeah, he was certainly the start of that. Seeing him use NLP on stage was the instigator for me to go and investigate it further for myself. And then I found a teacher who had worked with some of the greatest people that did NLP, and I went and learnt from him first, and that did a few years with him. And then I went, well, okay, I want to find now the founder that actually created NLP, which was Dr. Richard Bandler. So I went and spent time with him in both America and London, worked with him, and he was one of my teachers. And so that was definitely a game changer for me, learning the skills of NLP. But then I took that further and went, well, hypnosis was actually even a step above that, and could get the results even faster. So, and I was looking for faster results for myself, but also other people. And so that's when I went into the field of hypnosis. But one of the other things I think might be helpful for your audience as well, is one of the things that I find is true in life and business is no matter what you want to achieve to be successful, the first step is you getting clarity. All right? Because when you get clarity, that leads you to have more certainty. All right? And the more certainty you have in your body, then that gives you more confidence. And because you have more confidence, you take more action. And because you take more action, you ultimately get more success. Right? But it starts with getting clarity. So if you've got a goal, you want this in life or this in a relationship, or you want whatever it is, you want this around your health or whatever it is, you get the clarity first. Because once you've got the clarity, then your mind works that, okay, now I've got more certainty around that. I know exactly what I need to do to reach this weight or to build this muscle or to have this perfect relationship. So then you've got the certainty, then you'll have more confidence. Again, like I said, you take more action, which leads to success. So that's a basic formula for success.
When you think about what you said before about being like the sun, and then you combine that with clarity, what would be the biggest or one of the biggest dominoes that people can focus on first to help give them that life that they desire, their version of success?
Well, I think is firstly, obviously understanding themselves by and using like hypnosis, or you could meditate or whatever, but actually get in touch and talk to your own unconscious mind. Because if you're not talking to your unconscious mind, then you're allowing a little childlike inside your mind to basically run everything, and it's going to run amok because it's programming that's come from things that have happened in your childhood is really going to dominate and control where it is that you go in life. So if you're communicating with it and talking to it, then you're starting to see, well, what are the limitations or things that may be holding you back, all right? But unless you're willing to do that work at the unconscious level, then things are just going to keep cropping up, or you're going to self-sabotage yourself and you won't get where you want to go. So I think it's the first thing is definitely work on your own mindset.
The topic of self-sabotage, in layman terms, what is self-sabotage, and why is it so common for people when they want this life, they want to feel good, they want to be successful, but they seem to just keep messing it up? Well,
it can come from a few different things. One, fear, obviously, and their unconscious mind is designed to protect you and keep you safe. But if you've had something that's held you back in the past, or something that may have happened, early on in your life, your unconscious has taken on that and gone, okay, I don't want that to happen again to this person. So I'm going to, anytime you get in a situation where that's going to do something that could put you in jeopardy of harming yourself or whatever that may be, it's going to sabotage that. And I'll give you an example. I remember I had a client, she was only about 12 years old, and her father had a friend who just bought a new sports car. I think it was a Ferrari. And anyway, he dropped into their beach house where they were down at the beach on a holiday to show her father the car. And this bright red, Ferrari sports car. And as a little girl, she was there, a 12-year-old girl. And she said to the gentleman, she said, "Oh, could I go for a ride in the sports car?" And he said, "Oh, no, I can't take you at the moment. I've just got to take your dad." Right? Because it was only a 2-seater car. So he couldn't take her and her dad at the same time. He was happy to take her afterwards. But so she, as a little 12-year-old girl, went, "Oh, rich people are mean." That's what she said to herself, right? Mm-hmm. She said, "Oh, this rich person, because he's got this flash sports car, he's really mean. He won't take me for a ride in the car." That was what her brain made of it as a 12-year-old, right? Even though that wasn't really the reality, but that's what she said to herself. So, okay, later on, she's about 35 years old. She's running a very successful, or starting to have a very successful business. And every time she started to get real success in the business, she would sabotage the business in some way, and then it would, nearly fall apart. And then she'd build it right back up and she'd sabotage it again. So it was this whole, up like waves, she'd start to go really successful, then crash and burn. And then, so this was happening. So she came to me as a client, and I worked with her with hypnosis. And we discovered that about this whole childhood experience with the man in the Ferrari. See, at the unconscious level, she'd now said to herself, well, rich people are mean. Every time she started to become rich with her own business, she went against her own values, which would be, I don't want to be a mean person. So because she didn't want to be a mean person, she sabotaged the business so she wasn't rich again, right? Because there was this internal conflict. Right. And so she didn't know that. So the moment she had that realization, she was able to change that. And then her business took off and she was able to keep that wealth. But again, these things can happen, in our childhood or through different things that happens. Someone might do something and you go, oh, I can't trust people anymore. And then, you bring those things into your life, whereas other people don't trust you because you're a reflection. You're like a mirror. And those people go, there's something about this guy I don't trust, right? Yeah. Really, it's not about them. It's actually you. Yeah. You don't trust people. So you're reflecting it onto them. And then they don't trust you. So they don't do business with you. Or, so there's all those sorts of things. So, and again, it comes back to your unconscious mind or values or beliefs that have been created along the way.
I had literally exactly what you just described. I had that situation happen to me with the guy called Morgan Nelson. He owns the seminar that I was at on the weekend. Oh, okay, and I met him a number of years ago, multiple times. I did like a free coaching call with him, and then I went to his free event that he was running in Sydney. Mm-hmm. And there was a few things that had happened where I was judging him, and I thought he had an ego, and I was like, oh, this guy just cares about money. Like there's just something about him. There's something off. I don't want to work with him. And because I had a couple of opportunities, but I decided against it because I felt like my intuition was saying no. And I was like, no, I don't like this guy. And then over time, I would just see him continue to grow his personal brand, continue to grow his companies. And then he's just getting more and more success. And so I'm thinking, this guy's walking the path that I want to walk. I used to think these things about him, but his success is undeniable. So I can't let myself get in my own way, and I can't let my ego stop me from the reality that this guy has something that I can learn from.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I when this seminar was announced, and I made sure that I had nothing else on this weekend because I'd missed the last few, and I wanted to make sure that I could make it and to learn from him. And I was actually I bought the platinum ticket because I wanted to maximize on the experience. And yesterday, when we were on the boat, we were on like a yacht for a party before we went to the beach club after, which was like the after party. And I had a conversation with him, and I just said to him, mate, I want to be honest with you. I don't want to tell you about how I first felt about you when I first met you, because I didn't have anything to hide, but I thought it was also interesting to just bring it to the light so that you could let it go. And we had a conversation, and I ended up apologizing to him, even though he had no idea what was going on. I apologized to him because I was essentially projecting exactly what you're saying. I'm projecting my own unconscious beliefs onto him. And then ultimately that was stopping me from getting to where I needed to go. Now, did I regret anything? Not at all, because ultimately that was the path that I needed to go down. But then in recognizing that, then you take that power back, because yes, you will do things consciously and unconsciously, but then once you start to realize what is going on, then it becomes your choice whether you want to continue walking down that path or whether you want to take ownership and go, no, I want to be better. I want to be better. And it was a super powerful moment, because then he shared a story with me about how he did the same thing with a mentor that he met a number of years ago over an incident. But I just thought it was a super interesting conversation, and a big lesson for me from that was that, first of all, you can change, you can forgive yourself, people can change, and people aren't as you think they are just, like we're saying, or like you're saying, like they are just a mirror reflecting back these parts of you that maybe you haven't accepted in yourself.
Yeah, well, that's true. And that's not always the case. And I guess sometimes you do need to pay attention to your intuition, because sometimes your intuition is trying to tell you something, and it can be right. Okay, that person isn't to be trusted, or there's something not right. But it is trying to give you a message, and it may be giving you a message that's something you need to look at and work on for yourself. And sometimes it may be giving you the heads up, hey, this person is dodgy and I need to check that out. But either way, pay attention to your unconscious, because it is trying to talk to you and tell you something.
Yeah.
Because it can see more things that you can't see.
Yes.
And if you let your ego get in the way, then you'll be blindsided by it. And that certainly happened to me. I had someone rip me off quite a lot of money who was a lawyer, and I'd allowed my own ego at the time to colour my judgment, and I look back at it and go, wow, he played on that. He was a con man, and he stroked my ego, and I fell into it. And it was a time where I let my ego actually get in the way, and so if I hadn't have, and I had paid attention properly to my unconscious, it was giving me signals that there was something not quite right about this person. But I let my ego get in the way, and I didn't pay attention to it. And so I got burnt badly. So a good lesson for me. So definitely stay grounded and true to yourself. But do pay attention to it, because sometimes it is just like we were talking about. There's something you don't like about that person. You've got to look at that and ask yourself, okay, is that something in me like that I don't like, right? That I'm projecting, or it's being projected back to me. That's something I perhaps need to look at, right? Because it's something I dislike about that person. It's probably something that you do as well, and it's so you need to take the feedback and look at that. But sometimes it is that you're actually picking up on something that's not legit or not quite right, and you need to pay attention to that, because your unconscious is there to protect you. So if you got that bad feeling and it's sort of saying don't walk down that dark alley, then I'd pay attention to it and don't go down the dark alley, because you could be walking into some trouble. So but the more you can learn to pay attention to your own unconscious, the more in tune you'll get to it, and the closer you'll then be at being able to see things for what they really are, or make it work for you.
So how do people know the difference between intuition and then an ego?
Well, I think that comes down to just really practice and And again, getting comfortable with being able to talk to your unconscious and going, well, hang on, is this my ego talking, or is this really what I think or believe? And the more you can have those conversations with yourself, whether you're meditating on it and going, well, is this really, what I'm thinking or believe or what? Then just meditate on it if you do that. But I think that just comes with practice of doing it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Very simple answer. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
So, and the more you do it, then the ego will get quieter and quieter as well.
Yeah.
So,
I was introduced to this concept of, through Kerr and Ray, of dissolving the ego. And I found that to be really interesting because when I look at my own life and I started to understand this concept of an ego, I got to a place where I realized that the ego actually isn't bad.
no.
It's not good either. It's just a
It
thing.
is.
And from the view that I had painted in my head to make sense of things, is I sort of looked at the ego as being a spokesperson for all of your beliefs. It's like your ego has access to all of your beliefs and values, and it will give you feedback in real time. So without getting caught up in the idea of it being good or bad, just looking at it for what it is, and it's built from this part of your brain that wants to help you survive, but also give you feedback and help keep you on the path that it thinks it needs to be on. And then so, for example, if you are struggling with your ego, then maybe it's not the ego, it's the beliefs and values that the ego is trying to translate to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I think the more you communicate with it and tell it, what you ultimately want, and have your ego and the other voices inside your head work together as a team. That's the key. Because if you have them working together as a team, then one's not going to take over and dominate the others. They work collaboratively to get you the best result. And I think that's key if you really want to get ahead, is to make sure that all those parts are working together as one, as opposed to individually having their own agendas. And that's what often happens for people. People that procrastinate, there's one part of them goes, oh yeah, I really want this. And the other part's going, nah, not going to do that, whatever. So now they struggle, right? Because they're procrastinating. Yeah. That's because they have parts in conflict, and I often share a metaphor with people when I'm talking on stage, which is the best way to understand your unconscious and your conscious mind, right? So you have a conscious mind and an unconscious or subconscious. And to give you an example, back in the days when you had a pirate ship and you have a captain of the ship, you have a pirate and you've got the crew on the ship. So think of it like this, who's in charge of a pirate ship, the captain or the crew? What would you say?
Well, the captain.
The captain, yeah, of course. So the captain's in charge of the ship, right? Who does all the work and the labour on the ship?
The crew.
The crew,
yeah.
That's right. They're the workers doing the paddling and steering the ship, etc. But it's the crew that are doing all the work. So the captain of the ship is your conscious mind. But the crew is your subconscious or unconscious mind. Right? So what happens though in a pirate ship days, if you have the captain treats his crew really badly, you get a mutiny.
Yeah.
Right? So now who's in control? Well, the crew. Yeah, the crew's in control because the captain is overthrown by the crew because, he treated them badly. So now what happens is if the crew's in control, right, then there's no one leading the ship and you get this mutiny happening. So that's when you get the procrastination, right? Because you've got everyone's trying to, have their own say or do their own thing. Right, because you've got a mutiny happening. So you want everyone working together as a team, right, with the captain as well, all working cohesively. And that's why it's important that you have conversations with your own subconscious or unconscious mind so that they work together. Because as a team, you're going to get far more done than trying to do it as an individual, right? You've got twice the amount of people that can help those things happen, make it happen. So, and you think about it, when you sleep at night time, you're consciously sleeping, but your unconscious is wide awake. Otherwise, if it wasn't, your heart would stop beating.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? Wouldn't be pumping blood, wouldn't be rejuvenating your cells and rebuilding your cell structure for health in your body. That all happens when you're in deep sleep, because your unconscious is awake making that happen. Right? So, and the moment people get that realization that you have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind, a subconscious mind, the power is in the subconscious. So that's where all your values, beliefs, past experiences, are stored. Right? So that's what needs to change. If you want to create effective, lasting change in anyone, and especially yourself, then you have to do it at the unconscious level. Because you can consciously say, I don't want to eat that chocolate cake because I'm trying to lose weight. Consciously, you're saying that, and the unconscious says, no, screw that, I'm going to have that chocolate cake, and it'll just have it. Right? And your willpower's gone out the window because you only consciously wanted to perhaps stop it. But your unconscious has all the power. So working at that subconscious level is critical for ongoing success in all areas of life. Health, well-being, relationships, you name it.
Well, it sort of makes me think of manifestation when we talked about this, because it'd be interesting to hear what you have to say about this, but I would say that manifestation is like that concept, and because you're either manifesting positive things or negative things, but then as a whole, that's what's happening. And so if you're friends with your thoughts, if you're on the same team, if you respect the crew, if you give them what they need, you understand and try to listen to them, but still keep that relationship where you're the captain and they're the crew and you work in harmony, then you get to manifest that life of your dreams, because you're talking to the crew. The crew's giving you feedback on what needs to happen. You're talking to the crew on what's going on. And then that allows you to create this beautiful life. And then you get even more technical with it, and you look at like the reticular activating system, for example, which is just, working. It's like that whole thing on steroids.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
We take in all of this information every single second of every single minute of every single day, but it's impossible for us to really encapsulate all of that information. So how does it understand what you believe and what you value? Yeah,
well, on average, we have about 90,000 thoughts a day go through our head. So my question to you is, how many of those thoughts are positive ones and how many are negative? So how many are, have you got your RAS attracting what you want in life? And it won't be unless you've actually specifically asked it to. And that's where it comes back to having these conversations at the unconscious level, where you say, hey, listen, my team inside me, because you've got a health part, you've got a lover part, you've got a fitness part, you've got, a confidence part, you've got, your male part, you've got all these parts of you, right, make up each of us as an individual. Well, they all play a role inside your head. Why not be talking to them saying, hey, listen, I'm about to go to this seminar like you went to. I want one part to be paying attention and taking in all the knowledge as fast as possible in ways that then I'll be able to recall it or use it in my own life. And I want another part to be tracking for new ideas. I want another part to be looking for this. You can give them instructions and they're going to go away and do that for you, while you're there consciously just taking this in, but unconsciously, you've got different parts doing all these things for you. Like before I go to bed, or I might say, okay, or before I go to a meeting for something, I might say, okay, whatever I need to have come up or to make this meeting work more effectively, I want my unconscious mind to come up with the tools, the resources, the ideas, so that I can help this client get whatever they need, in the best possible way, so I'm going to have my unconscious do the work so that I don't have to then worry about it. I can just turn up and just whatever I know the right thing is going to come out that's going to help that person. And that's because I can trust my own intuition and trust my unconscious mind, because I've been doing it so long. And, I never forget, I seen this in action, and I guess it's probably what I modelled off originally. Was we were about to give a talk in, I think it was Italy. I was over there with Dr. John Gray, who wrote the book Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus, and John was about to go on stage and talk in front of maybe, 5,000-6,000 people. And before he went on stage, I said, "Oh, do you know what you're going to cover and what you're going to talk about?" And da-da. And he says, "No." And he said, "I'm just going to do a little meditation 5 minutes before I go on stage, and I'll ask my unconscious and the parts of my mind to give me whatever I need to say that's going to resonate with the audience and give them exactly what they came here for. And I'll just trust in that process." So he did that. We were in the green room together. He did his little meditation, walks out on stage, does an amazing performance, gets a standing ovation, 5,000 people, blew them away. He didn't have a clue what he was going to talk about 5 minutes prior. And I went, wow, I got to learn how to do that. Because for me, prior to that, I used to be strutting notes and going through everything. And now I don't. I can just go and do the same thing. So the more you can build that relationship, so you want to have a great relationship with your unconscious, because otherwise you end up having a mutiny happening and now you've got them working against you. So you don't want that.
Exactly. I literally did that last weekend when I did this talk. I wrote on the sheet that they put up that my talk was going to be about how I cured celiac disease and mental illness. And then I was planning to buy a flip chart so that I could take notes, but they didn't have the one that I wanted when I went to office work. So I just thought, okay, I'll just leave it. And 10 minutes before I was about to go up there, Mum's like, "Oh, do you know what you're going to talk about?" And I said, "Yeah, well, this is the subject, but I have no idea where I'm going to go. I'll just walk into the room and get a feel for it and then go from there." And I walk into the room and we probably have, at that time, probably 12 people in the audience. And I just sort of looked around, I scanned them, and then I thought, okay, this is where I'm going to go. And then it's almost like I stepped aside and just let this thing
channel through you.
Exactly. Do what it needed to do. And then the power of trusting myself, but then also using things like meditation and breathing in real time to keep me slow, to keep me calm, and to just remember that, like, I know this stuff. I know this stuff. I don't need to prepare a massive speech for it because I actually know, and there's so many different ways that I can go in. And then that makes it so much more adaptable because I'm getting real feedback from the crowd in real time that will let me know, do I talk more about this? Do I talk less about this? Like, where do I go?
Well, I think also what's important too is because you're down to earth and genuine and coming from a loving space and from the heart, you're making about the audience, not about you, which is a key thing. Most people at your age don't get that, right? They're so busy going, they have nerves about speaking or whatever else, because they're making it about them and not about the audience, right? So because they're worried about, well, what are people going to think of me or whatever else? Well, it's not about you. It's about how can I make a difference to these people that I'm here to serve or I'm here to present to have an impact on their life. Because then you won't be nervous because it's not about you. It's about them.
Yeah.
And I see you come from that space, which is a real credit to you. And it shows from the amount of personal development you've done that you're in that space because you're about making a difference to the other people. And that really shows through. Yeah. And that's a great sign of a great leader and a great presenter.
Well, it's a lot of fun. Like I've created enough of a relationship with these parts inside of me that I'm friends with them. I've been listening to them and talking to them for years now. And I've trialed and errored a lot of it too. And I've understood what works and what doesn't work. And I'm still, I'm never done. When I think about the potential I've tapped into and what I haven't done in life, I reckon I'm maybe 8% of the way there. And I don't think I'll ever get above that number. I'd like to stay there forever. And I think it makes it so important to come to this stuff when I have that mindset of being a student forever and I don't know everything and I'm here to learn just as much from the people that I talk to as what they probably think they're going to learn from me. Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's one of the things that I feel so strongly about people in the mindset. We created a thing called the Success Library. And what that is, it's all these hypnosis tracks that I've built up over the years. And we keep adding to it every month. We add new tracks to it, to help people. But we put that together because I think it's such a critical part of helping people be more successful is working on themselves. Because, the better you become, the better impact you have on other people, right? And all the people around you, so you become a better person, you're better to be with, but also that has a positive impact on other people around you, right? And you get to change their lives, and then they go, wow, this is amazing, and then they change somebody else's life. So it's like this domino effect, And I've been fortunate through my career to have a huge effect on a lot of people by using these skills, and now those people are using those skills, on other people as well, and it's just dominating, through all these different generations and different people, And, from all sorts of things, I've helped my dad overcome a cancer using it. Talk
to us about that. I remember when you told me that story, that was just phenomenal.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you would know, that different emotions like anger, sadness, fear, guilt, regret, all emotions have an impact on the body. And they block energy flow. And, this is something Chinese have known for years. If you go to a Chinese acupuncturist, what acupuncture does, it helps unblock the blockages of energy that flow through your body, that are blocking the energy going to the part that's sore or needs healing, right? And people that have acupuncturists, or even if you go to a physio, that's what a physio is doing now with dry needling or any of that. They're trying to unblock blocked energy so that your body gives it the signal to heal. And the same thing as emotions in the body will block energy flow. So people that it's well known that if you have sadness, it lowers your immune system, right? So if you're sad about something, it'll lower your natural body's healing mechanism and, lowers your immune system. People that have conflict in their life, there's been proven medically in medical journals that conflict will spark cancer and create, and also there's anger, for example. Anger, it actually can cause heart attacks and high blood pressure. And it's known that when you have a lot of anger stored in your body, it increases your cortisol levels. It increases the cortisol around the heart muscle, which weakens the heart muscle tissues, and then people are prone to heart attacks. These are all medical things, right, that emotions store, right, in the body will do to you. So being able to release emotions unconsciously is super important, so that you're keeping your body naturally, in flow, so that it heals and does what it needs to and can handle those situations. So, being able to release emotions, anger, sadness, fear, regret, all those things, and being able to connect to love. And that could be connecting to love, and it might be loving your pet. It could be an animal, or it could be a dog or a cat. Or connecting to, you might believe in God, and so it's connecting to God, and that get love from that angle, or a spiritual level, or whatever it may be for you. It's getting those needs met is important, right? So that we have that energy flow through our body, because you'll see anyone that's sick or illness, they will, I guarantee you, have some stored emotion in their body that they haven't dealt with.
So what was the instance with your dad? How did you...
Yeah, so my dad, he developed cancer in the urine tract, and the doctors said to him, we're going to have to cut everything off, and you're going to have to wear a plastic bag and for you to be able to urinate in, because we've got to operate and do all this. And I said, no way, and took him out of hospital and said, no, we're going to do some work with him first, and that'll be a last resort if that was the case. So the doctor said, well, we need to see him in 3 months' time, because otherwise it could have spread and it would be worse. So I said, that's fine. So we had a fairly heated conversation, me and the doctor, but because he didn't want him to leave and they wanted to do the operation. So my dad was all for trying something different. He didn't want to have parts of him cut off and obviously have a bag. So I did the hypnosis work with him, and I did that. And he was probably in his 60s at the time. And my dad ended up dying of old age, late in, nearly 80 odd, without cancer. He's totally cancer-free. And we were able to achieve that really quickly. Because what I did was I went, okay, for him to have created that, it's probably from some strong emotion. It was conflict. And he'd had an incident where his brothers and sisters, he's from a big family, there's like 12 in his family, had put his mum, who was in her 90s, she was 98, and still living at home, looking after herself and, fit as a fiddle and fully with it. And they said, oh no, we think it'd be safer for her to move into a home at the hospital, rather than living at home by herself. And she wasn't by herself; she had actually friends living with her. And my dad was against it because he knew that would probably be the downfall of her, because she really liked being at home and she had friends there and things. And so, but they outvoted him, and so they put her into this home. And so he was really upset at the time with his brothers and sisters, and said, okay, that's it. I'm sort of writing my family off at the time. And I knew that was a real conflict for him. And sure enough, I mean, what my dad feared happened is my great-grandmother, when she went into the home, then lost all of the fight to live or even thing. And she went from being this sprightly 98-year-old that every day at 6 o'clock in the morning got up and walked up the street to buy the milk in the local paper by herself, right? She was that and knew it. And she could roll off 150 grandkids' names that she had, right? One after another. So she was really with it. She died in hospital on her 99th birthday. Wow. And so he was pretty cut about that. And anyway, I knew that was probably the source of when the conflict started. But I did a process that we have in the Success Library. It's a timeline process, but where I went back and got him to identify that conflict when it started and release, because he had all the anger and emotion built up around it. So we released that. It was a huge release, about the anger around that. And then, I put him on a higher dosage of supplements as far as vitamins and stuff like that. And within 3 months, he went back to the doctor and they said, oh, it's shrunk. It's nearly disappeared. It was still there, but within a few months after that, it had totally gone. And so he totally got over it. So, but again, that comes back from that stored emotion in your body.
So why do emotions store in the first place?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things our unconscious mind is designed to do is to bring these emotions up for you to deal with, to get the lessons from them. And if you don't, which happens a lot, people will go, oh shit, I don't want to have to deal with this. This is making me feel really upset or angry, or I'll stuff that back down, right? We're human beings. We want to put the lid back on that trash can and bury it and not think about that, right? And then, so you stuff it down, and then what happens when the time's right, or you're feeling safe enough to do so, that unconscious mind takes the lid off and brings it up and says, hey, Petrie, deal with this again. And you either go, oh, okay, I'm going to deal with what's making me feel like this, or I go put the lid on it and stuff it back down again, which is what most humans do. They stuff it back down and they don't want to face it or deal with it. And so if you do that, then it manifests inside and it causes dis-ease, right? So it's discomfort or dis-ease, which turns into disease in the body, right? Because you're blocking it, right? So the energy flow is no longer then able to flow. It gets blocked. And that's why people have pain. If you do an injury, then your body is blocked from that injury. So unless you have something like acupuncture, or you have something that's going to relink the broken circuit effectively in your body, then it can't heal. And it's the same with emotions. Yeah, so there's lots of books written on that around cancer and things like that. There was actually a German doctor from Dr. Max Gerson, who founded an institute in America called the Gerson Institute. And they were a well-known cancer institute for being able to treat cancer naturally. And it still operates today. And I've been to their institute and seen what they do. And he developed the treatments to naturally get rid of cancer. And he was the one, he'd done 1,000 medical tests, and he could diagnose when someone had some sort of conflict triggered, in their body. He could, through brain scans, say, okay, that's when the cancer started or triggered it. Wow. And he's written a number of books, this doctor.
Wow.
Yeah. So it all comes back to your mindset, and like good health is, you can have anything in moderation, but if you have too much of one thing, and then it becomes bad.
So then that would make sense when you see those stories of, say, like super healthy and fit people mysteriously getting sick or disease or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, guarantee you can look back. And I've through the years of dealing with lots of patients and people over the years, I've met people that have had, they'd had cancer, or they'd had a heart attack and things like that. And sure enough, if I ask them enough questions, turns out, I had this really bad conflict or whatever, or I had this anger build up for years over certain things, and then I had a heart attack. And you can see where it all comes back from.
Makes
and
sense.
Even with people, I remember working with a lady who was a presenter. I won't mention her name because she's still a well-known presenter out there, but she couldn't fall pregnant, and she was actually had a medical background herself, and so she said, all the tests are fine, everything should work, but I just can't fall pregnant. And anyway, I ended up hypnotizing her, and then a month later she fell pregnant, and turns out there was a values conflict, because she felt, well, if she fell pregnant, then she'd be giving up her speaking career, and then she'd be a mum as opposed to this well-known speaker and sort of celebrity figure, right? So there was a part of her unconscious mind stopping her falling pregnant, because she'd done because of her medical background, she'd done all the tests and things. Well, everything, all the levels were correct, and there was nothing wrong hormonally or anything with her or her husband. This was solely a psychological thing that was happening, but and that's what it was. It was a conflict around, well, who her identity was going to be then if she fell pregnant. Would she lose that? So she didn't want to lose that part of her, right? So I was able to get her to realize, well, she doesn't have to lose it. She can gain the other thing and have both. So then it was okay, right, for her to conceive naturally.
Wow. It's so interesting hearing you tell stories like this, because I went through an experience with you a month ago where we had identified that I had this part that was trying to protect me, and then I had this other part that was my higher self, and they were in massive conflict. And you said there's a couple of things that you said to me that stood out. The first thing is that hypnosis isn't what TV and movies make it out to be. It's more like a meditation, which is absolutely true. And then the second thing was that you're not going to notice too much in the moment. It's more going to be in the days coming after and the weeks coming after, and so on and so forth. And I had a really profound experience when I was driving home that helped me to realize that there's like two pieces to this thing that is life. This is what I've discovered, and I'll tell you the story, and then I'd love to hear your perspective on it and maybe your own experience with this. We've got the ship with all of the crew, and you're the captain, right? That's like your ship. But then I've also understood that there seems to be something that is, I don't know where it is, but it's like we're connected to that. Now, when you look at different cultures and different religions, they all have their own names for it. So Hinduism has Shakti and Shiva and Ganesh. Christianity has God. Islam has Allah, so on and so forth. I resonated more with this idea of ancestors. Now, it could be because I've got Aboriginal roots. It could be because this is just what Mum would sort of put into me. And I had multiple experiences that once my pop passed away like 13 years ago, I've had moments where it just feels like he's sending messages or he's talking to me. And then I've had instances where since Nan has gone, because I was actually really close with Nan. She was like a best friend of mine. I was fortunate enough to even live with her for a period of time. And when I'm driving home, I had this really profound experience where I was driving and I have had this voice that was telling me that I needed to stop smoking weed for a few months now. Well, no, for some time, to be honest, a lot longer than a few months. But I'd been questioning it for a few months. And I just said, one day I just said, like, who are you? And it said, Nan. And I was like, oh, like, whatever. Like, nah. Anyway, so I'm driving home And I'm thinking, you know, I've had a really mindfully expansive week. I can't wait to go home and smoke and meditate, because this is one of the things that I used to love to do after I'd expanded my consciousness, because I just insane things would happen when I would do that. I would see all of these pictures, I would see all of these movies, I could put all of these, like, I would describe it as puzzle pieces together at lightning fast speed, just exponentially. It was incredible. And so I was excited to do this, and that voice come through, and I said, "Who are you?" And he goes, "Nan." And I said, "Righto, Nan. If this is you, you have to make it so obvious that it is undeniable, because I am sick of talking to this voice and saying it's you. Like, I'm sick of this, and if it's you, then I'm out. But mate, you got to make it obvious. Like, no games, make it so obvious." And then a few moments later, I had this thought that I feel like I speak to Nan more than I speak to Pop. And then I felt a bit like, you know, funny, because I felt like I was favouring one of them. And anyways, and then I had a thought that I would really love to hear some stories from like when they were younger. And then literally 3 seconds later, my uncle called me. Now, that wasn't super bizarre because he was returning my call. But then for the next few hours, he did exactly that. He told me many stories. I didn't have to talk. I could just shut up and just listen, and just, like, it was fabulous. And then, anyways, after that conversation, I'm thinking, man, I'd love to smoke. And the voice goes, "Oh, I was just kidding. You can smoke. I just wanted to see if you would actually do it." And I'm like, excellent. And then so I did. And then, but it wasn't it. Like, it wasn't what it used to be for me. It wasn't it. And then so after that weekend, I started to think, like, maybe it's not it. Now, when I was meditating, I was in the sauna and I was meditating, and I was outside meditating, thinking what I just said to you, this is not it. Maybe I'll just stop anyway. Like, I don't know. And then I open my eyes and I see a magpie. Now, this isn't so crazy because magpies are very common, but what I did to myself one day was I said, I'm going to make it as easy as possible for my ancestors, for my nan and my pop, to contact me, and make it as easy as possible for me to feel them and their energy. And then so one of the ways that Pop would contact me is I would just see a magpie. And I'd see a magpie, I'd think of him, and I'd just remember how magical everything is, and it's all good. And so I'm meditating, and I open my eyes, and I see a magpie. I'm thinking, okay, no big deal. Like, cool, g'day, Pop. Anyways, I go into the sauna. It's a bloke in there, he's playing music. He always comes in, he always plays fabulous music. This time, he was playing music that was quite sad. And it was like sad song after sad song. And I'm thinking, okay, this bloke doesn't feel too good. But I don't want to ask him about his feelings, because there's like heaps of people in the sauna and he's a blokey bloke. So I'm thinking, how can I like shift the energy? And I'm like, okay, mate, can you play? Because I know he loves like old school rock and roll and so on. I said, mate, can you play a song with a guitar solo? Like a really mad guitar solo. And he said, yeah, okay, I'll play this song. The song that he played was the song that was played at my pop's funeral. Now, the funniest thing about this was that it was played with a ukulele. So that he interpreted guitar solo as a ukulele, which was just, you know, profound. And I was just sitting there like, wow, like this is phenomenal. And then I didn't feel like telling him the significance of that, though. I didn't want to tell a story and make it about me. So instead I said to him, do you believe in synchronicities? And he said, oh, I don't know much about it, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, what do you know? And he's like, I don't know much. I wouldn't really consider myself a super spiritual person. But what I do know is that one time I saw a psychic, and I was really hesitant. But I saw a psychic, and she proceeded to tell me things that there is no way she could have ever known unless she had the powers that she said that she did. And he's like, I still don't know what to think of it, but I know that it was just a really profound experience. So it was nice to share that moment, and then from that moment, the music got better. And so it was nice. It was worth it. And anyways, I get to the end of the weekend, and I'm thinking, I wake up on Monday morning and I'm just like, it's not it. I don't want to smoke anymore. I've had enough. Like, this phase of my life, it served a lot of positive things for me. But now I've done so much work on myself where I don't get the same benefit that I used to. So I don't need to do it every day. I don't even need to do it every week. I feel really good just being in my own energy, drinking water, eating fruit.
Well, the thing is, you can tap into that same altered state
Mm.
by putting yourself into hypnosis or a deeper meditation.
Mm.
And that's what what happens is people don't realize, but if you can put yourself into hypnosis or into that meditated sort of state, then you are creating an altered state, right? If you're having weed or any other substance to create an altered state, that's just manipulating you to have an altered state, but you can do it naturally without any harmful, things like that. So, and that's the beauty of it, because you can create that altered state, and it means you're vibrating then at a different frequency. So because you vibrate, we're all made up of a frequency, and the more you vibrate at a higher frequency means you attract more in with your RAS or more opportunities, or you can actually then become more clairvoyant, which is like, and this is what clairvoyants are doing. They're actually vibrating at a higher frequency so that they're tuning into that frequency like a radio frequency. They're picking up on other stations, right? When that just so happens to be, could be from your ancestors, or, and they're tuning into that like a tuning fork, and then being able to relay it to you, right? And so that is, one of the philosophies. I spent time in India with saints and things like that, and they're teaching meditation to get you to vibrate at a higher frequency, so that then you can tune in more to the universal energy, which means you're tuning into more things. Like everything's like a frequency. So if you vibrate at a higher frequency, then you tune into more opportunities, and you have more good opportunities come your way because you've tuned into it, right? And those people that aren't having those things just aren't in tune with it, right? So they're vibrating at a lower frequency. And you'll see that the people that are more successful, they're just vibrating at a higher frequency. You take someone like an Elon Musk, people see him as a genius. He's just vibrating at a higher frequency so that his intelligence is being drawn in, because he's tapped into that frequency to be able to give him the knowledge to be able to create a rocket ship, or to, create a Tesla or whatever. So we all have that capability. But if you don't choose to use it, then you'll just stay the way you are. So, the more you tap into these skills, the higher your frequency vibrates. And so you naturally attract more, right? And more opportunities. And you get to see things, or you get to think of other stuff, other ideas that people haven't thought of yet. And people go, oh, how come he can, that was amazing that he thought of that. Well, no. So people think that about me as a marketer. They go, wow, you just think way outside the box and create these great ideas or marketing concepts that help them grow their brands. Well, I'm just vibrating at a higher frequency to be able to see those opportunities. They could see it too if they were, but they're just not. So, of course, I get a lot of paid well for consulting to people, but it's just because I've tuned into that through my experience. And that was something I learnt from one of my marketing teachers, Jay Abraham. I went to dinner with him. We were sitting down, and he just I asked him something, and he just started blurting out all this stuff. And I'm scribbling notes like crazy about these ideas. And at the end of it, I was saying, oh, can you go back and tell me about that bit? I didn't get it written down. And he go, oh, I don't even know what I said. Because he just channeled it, right? He got onto a different plane or frequency, and it was like just spewed out all this amazing marketing ideas and concepts. And at the end of it, he couldn't remember what he'd told me, So I learnt from then on, always carry a tape recorder back then. But I do that now. And I tell people when I'm having a marketing consult with them about their brand or business, I say, I need you to record the conversation, because I'm going to just tap into, some great stuff for you. But I may not remember all the stuff that I've told you or shared with you at the end. Right? So record it, because it'll be gold. Yeah. But that's because I do that too now. That's something I've learned over the years, but I do that, that's why I use hypnosis myself, hypnosis and meditation every single day, to tap into, what it is I want.
Yeah. It would make so much sense. And then to sort of close the loop on the story, so I'm having this experience, and anyway, I say to myself, okay, I don't need it anymore. I've done enough work on myself that I don't need it, which was fabulous. And so I'm thinking, okay, that's it. And then I'm having a conversation with my brother that evening, and he says to me, I got to tell you a story. Now, mind you, we haven't had a conversation like this in a while. And so he says, man, I need to tell you a story. He's like, it feels like Nan and Pop are just around. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, they are. And he's like, yeah, but it just feels more at the moment. And then he's telling me how all of this weird stuff is happening at home. And I'm listening to the story, and my first thought is like, you're a bit loopy. But then I'm like, come on, man, relax. At the end of the day, he is doing what I do, which is making it easy for it to feel like they're around and you're not alone and there's more to this life than just what's in front of you. And then so he's telling me all this crazy stuff that's happening at home. And then he says this to me. He goes, I feel like they're telling me to stop smoking weed. And I just, what? I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, every time I go to do it for the last couple of weeks, the wind has blown away more than I've been able to smoke. And I just thought, whoa. I was like, and then I told him what I told you before about how I asked them to make it obvious. And I said, well, I told him, I asked them to make it so obvious, and they came through you. And it was from that moment I stepped aside, because I've been connected to them, but it was never like a priority. But it was from that moment that it became my highest value.
Yeah.
And whether you want to call it God or ancestors or what, but it's this thing that is out there that knows you better than you know yourself, and it understands where you're going and what you want. And if you honor that and act as like maybe not the best word to use, but like a servant in a sense, trusting that it's going to be perfect.
Yeah, I think we're all guided, and I think if you tap into that guidance from ancestors or grandparents or whatever, like my dad's passed away now, but I still connect with him. You know, if I'm, and I know that he's there looking over me, or if I wanted to ask something, I could, and I'd get an answer in some way, and to give you a sign or a signal, absolutely, totally, 100% believe in that.
What do you think it is?
Well, I think just because they're not on this physical plane doesn't mean that they're not here. And there's that, there's all these centuries of knowledge is out there, and if you can tap into that, you're tapping into knowledge, infinite knowledge, in space and time. So I think that we can tap into any of that knowledge if we put our mind to it. So, and I believe, yes, different religious cultures have different religious icons, as you say, there's Hindu and then Muslim and different and Christian. They all have some sort of God that they believe in or they worship, and or whether it's just the universe or whatever it is. I believe that we are a part of something bigger and greater, and that, whether whatever faith you believe in or whatever, or even if you don't, there is a universe that you can tap into to gain that knowledge, and you've got that guidance there. You just have to ask for it. And most people don't, but if you do, some of there's the people I know that tap into theirs, and they're incredibly wealthy billionaires, but I can tell you they have a practice where they're tapping into that knowledge or that belief or faith of theirs to get that resource and to get the guidance.
It makes so much sense. For me, it makes so much sense. And when even I think about the Aborigines, and I'm actually meeting with an elder in the next few weeks, I'm really excited to have a chat, because I've never explored that. But what I've understood from my little bit of research is this culture is, some say it's like over 70,000 years old.
Yeah, the Aboriginal culture is the oldest living culture ever, in Australia, all around the world. The Aboriginals were one of the oldest. Absolutely.
And so it makes sense, if there has to have been something incredible with you. They talk about the dream times and they talk about that stuff. And so for them to survive on an island that is Australia, how else would they know what to eat, what to drink? Because the reality of if it was all truly trial and error, black and white, then how would they survive?
Yeah, no, I mean, and that knowledge and wisdom is there to be tapped into, and I think that just because they're not perhaps present on this visual plane that we all see, that doesn't mean that you can't tap into that energy or that source of power at all. It's like, radio frequencies come through, you can't see them, but they come through your windscreen of your car and go into your radio or a mobile phone. You can be sitting in your car. Well, the radio wave to get to your mobile phone had to go through the glass window and the metal doors on your car to get to your phone. You can't see it, but it's definitely gone through you, the electromagnetic frequency, right? So just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not real or it isn't there or that you can't tap into it.
Exactly. Well, you look at Wi-Fi, for example. It's like this is, or even... like the mobile network. It's like this is 2G, and then this idea of God and ancestors is like 10G, or 5G if you want to get really technical of what's relevant now. Yeah.
I mean, there's whole research in the US now called the heart maths, and it's where, energy from the heart and the vibration that gives off can change your emotions and change your thought processes. There's a whole science behind all that. All this stuff now, science is sort of catching up or validating stuff that's been around for centuries from the ancient cultures. If you look at the Egyptian cultures, or if you look at the Hindu cultures and the spiritualism and the saints and the things they've been doing for years, and it's well documented. They've been creating miracles or manifesting things and things like that. It's been around for centuries. Science is only now catching up with some of that, going, oh, actually, this is validation, with cells and stuff like that. Doesn't mean it hasn't been true all this time. It's just they're catching up.
Yeah, exactly.
But those people, these ancient cultures have been doing it for centuries.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could even argue because they didn't get caught in this idea of having to go through the process that makes it science, allowed them to make the progress that they did.
Yeah.
What's your experience with the saints in India? You said you went over to study.
Yeah, well, that changed my life as well, I guess. It changed my whole mindset on what's possible and not possible, because I got to witness things that, for most people you couldn't fathom or even believe, where they used energy and their meditation processes to manifest things or create things that sort of, once you've seen it, you sort of can't unsee it. It sort of blows your mind. You go, okay, well, hang on, that just shifted my whole thought process on reality, and so I think the more you can experience other people's cultures or other countries and then, you appreciate the world so much more and what we have and how gifted and lucky we are in Australia. So, that's been one of the greatest gifts, I think, is having the gift of being able to travel and being able to go to different cultures and different religions and different places to see, how they see the world. And, I always go, if I go to, I've had the privilege of working with the royal family in the Middle East. So I've got to experience all the Muslim cultures and their, ways that they worship and the different philosophies and skill sets. And, it's amazing, and you appreciate things, of how they do things. So I'm very open-minded to all religions, all cultures, and try and experience them all to have a better understanding myself. So... But I believe there's definitely a greater power out there, and you just need to tap into it in whatever format that you believe in, and it will work for you if you tap into that, for sure.
What is a saint, and how did you find yourself to even be in India to begin with, and then what did you learn when you were there?
Okay, well, how that come about was actually through working with John Gray at the time. John and I were business partners, and John had actually gone blind in one eye, and he was looking for a way to heal that. And because he'd gone to medical doctors, he could afford the very best doctors in America. And they all said, no, you're blind in that eye. We can't do anything about it. Clinically, you're blind in one eye. And so John didn't believe that, that he felt that he could do something about it. So he spent money on seeking out the very best natural healers or people that had healing capabilities from a natural point of view or spiritual point of view, if you like. And he went to Egypt. He went and meditated in a pyramid, paid the Egyptian government a lot of money to go over there and do that in private. He travelled the world looking for healers. And he'd heard about this saint in India that was creating miracles and doing all this amazing healing work. So he went to India and sought him out and found him. And that was true. This guy was saying, yep, I could heal your eye. You need to come and do all these medical, meditation processes, and we'll get your sight back. So John, every 6 weeks, would fly to India and do all these processes, spend a week there, and then come back to America. And anyway, John was telling me all the amazing stuff he'd been learning and what he's starting to get his sight back, and it was amazing. And I thought, wow, I've got to know more about this. So I organised a trip for John and me to go to India and we'd go and speak on stage in India to all the different business people over there. So I organised that trip, but the real reason I organised it was because I wanted to go to India to spend time with this Swami and learn, because I was fascinated by the fact that someone could create these sorts of miracles or do these healing processes, and I was fascinated to learn. So I flew to India, and I went a week earlier before we were due to do these business events, and I flew to this person's ashram, or flew to a town quite a way away, and then had to get a car and a driver to take me to the ashram. It was deep down in south of India. And so I went there, and I got there, and when I went to the administration part of this big ashram, I said, I've come here because I wanted to meet with the Swami. And they said, he's in Germany. He's over there giving a lecture in Germany. He won't be here, and we don't know when he's going to be back. He didn't tell us. He just left, and we don't know when he'll be back, but you're welcome to stay. And so I thought, okay, well, that's a bummer, but I'll stay. And anyway, so they talk about synchronicity. So I'm staying at the ashram. I'm there the first night. I stayed the first night and did some meditation processes there and sort of got orientated around this big ashram. And then one of the management of the ashram came up to me saying, you're not going to believe it, that the Swami has turned up from Germany. He's came back. He had a calling to come back to meet a special guest that was come from Australia. And he wants to meet with you. And I went, wow. So anyway, so I got to sit and meet with him. And what was quite profound, I didn't think, I was blown away that he'd been called back from Germany to meet me. It was like the synchronicity, especially when they said, look, he won't be back for a week. So I thought, I've wasted a week of my time getting there. And anyway, and he was fascinating to talk to, and so I spent a few hours sitting with him just talking and talking about knowledge and wisdom and why was he here and how he had these powers that were quite phenomenal. And anyway, after we'd finished that conversation, he invited me to spend time with him again, one-on-one, where he would do some energy work with me and show me some of these things. And he did. And it blew my mind, but also changed me as a person forever. So, and he sort of said to me, he said, you have to do these sorts of processes, light 3 candles on this time of the year and do this meditation process. And to this day, it's been 20 years or more, every date, that date, I have 3 candles, do that process, never missed it, ever, no matter where I am in the world. Wow. And so he had a profound impact. And what I realised afterwards is what was quite profound was that when I went back to the accommodation area of the ashram, other people came up gathering around me going, "Oh, you must be someone very high up or special." And I said, "Why is that?" And some of these people were medical doctors that were there. They had been living there for a number of years at the ashram to learn some of this saint's techniques and healing powers and things. Like, I met a medical doctor from California that had been there for years, and I said, "Oh, no, I'm no one special. Why is that?" And they said, "Oh, you must be." And I said, "Why? Why do you say that?" And they said, "Well, we've been here 2 years and we've never had a sit-down meeting with the Swami like you had spent a few hours, because we could all see you because I was out in the middle of the ashram with him." And they said, "We've never had that opportunity. So, you must be someone of influence or whatever for him to do that." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm an author, and this is who I am." But I said, no, and it made me realise I'd been gifted this huge opportunity, and he knew I was coming to India, and he came back from Germany to meet with me. It was like how everything about the whole trip, it was mind-blowing.
Yeah, wow.
And what I realised was he was looking for other people that could help change people's views on spiritualism and connecting to energy and that. And through the work I did as a business leader and a marketer and help people with hypnosis and things like that, he's seen me as someone that he could work with or teach some of his principles that could then go and help other people and teach it to the Western world. And so that was why he spent the time with me and to do that. And he's seen John Gray the same, as someone that was famous in his own right because of his best-selling books, that he could take that message and that. And John did write a book called Practical Miracles based on Swami's work.
Wow.
Yeah. So so that was my journey, and that sort of set me on a whole different path then of personal development, knowing that there's so much more. And even Tony Robbins is on that same path now. He goes over to India regularly, and the more you grow, the more you realise you don't know, and there's so much more to learn, and you end up on this path. And so I think it's always an ongoing journey, and hopefully through what I've done, I've enlightened a number of other people and helped them on that pathway, and they'll find their own enlightenment.
What did he teach you, or what did he show you in those few hours that you spent with him?
It was more just about, I guess, that there is so much more to the universe than we think, that there are different gods out there, there are different beings of knowledge, and whether you call it God or you call it something else or whatever, there is that higher power out there, and you need to trust in that and tap into it. And you tap into it by learning to meditate or to do hypnosis and get into that, so you can get into an altered state that allows you to receive that knowledge or receive that energy. And I guess that was the realization. I still connect with the doctor in America. He has a whole medical practice now in California that teaches this stuff.
Wow.
And just once you've been exposed to it and you see that there is so much more to life, so much more to the world, then it opens your mind to so many other possibilities.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the greatest thing. It's like, well, okay, anything's possible if you allow yourself to tap into that.
Was that the first and last encounter you had with him?
Yes, on that trip, yeah.
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 You met him afterwards?
Connected afterwards, but not face to face like that. That was the time face to face.
Yeah.
And then eventually he actually left his body. And
I was hoping we could talk about this. Can you tell that story? Because I love this.
As a saint, he felt that his work on this plane was could be greater served if he was to become more of a statue, and that he could pass on his knowledge to so many students, which he did. And then he left his body because he felt that if he left his body, he would become even more powerful as an entity that people worshipped like as a statue, and that he could do more greater good on that level, because of his beliefs. And so even though he was fit and healthy and he was only young, about 35 years old at the time, he told everyone in advance, I'm going to lay down and I'm going to leave my body. And, this body is just a vehicle for him, because he's, an energetic spirit, and he did. So he actually, at the time, he did a couple of things where he got these medical doctors, John Gray and another medical doctor from America, come and guard over his body, where he left his body for a couple of days. And so clinically he was dead. Like, there was no pulse, no nothing. He'd left his body. And he had them guard his body, because in the tradition, the Hindu tradition, is they bury them really quickly once they've passed. And he didn't want his body to be buried because he was going to come back to it. and that's what happened. They've written about this now in books and things, but they monitored and guarded his room and body in there. They said he's clinically dead medically, from a medical point of view, he was no longer there. But 2 days later, he sat back up in his body and he was alive again. Wow. And he'd gone off to have a meeting with other powers and came back. But then, a few years after that, he decided to leave permanently, and now there's just a statue of him, and he left his, and so he has ashrams or things all around the world, in Germany and India and America. There's big ashrams and everything, all worship him now for his teachings, and they still teach it, and you can still go to his ashram in India.
Where is his ashram in India?
It's in a place called Penakonda.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and you can look it up and see all about his history and the work he did. I mean, he's been written up by many news teams and things like that. So,
what's his name?
Swami Kalawesha.
Have you got any other stories that are mind-blowing like that, or anything that you love to tell, or that was really pivotal for you in your life?
No, I think, similar things to that. Other great speakers that were on stage, like Deepak Chopra, Dr. Wayne Dyer. I had the privilege of speaking on stage with them, and I would talk to them in the green room before we went on stage, or before each of us had to speak, and I asked them what was their journey, and what did they learn, and they pointed me in the direction of similar places. Read this book by this Swami or whatever that changed their life. So there was a constant theme as I was growing in my skill set and knowledge base in these areas. Other gurus that I looked at as gurus that I was learning from as well had been there before me, had gone on that same journey. And so their stories or their recommendations was the same path. And so I think, obviously history and success leaves clues, and there was definitely those clues, and so that was the path I followed, and it certainly served me well and helped me, and I've had the privilege of helping a lot of other people on that same path. So I think that's definitely the pathway to go.
How deep into NLP and hypnosis and timeline therapy were you before you had this experience, and then how did that alter how you showed up in business and for your clients?
Well, I was really deep into those things prior, and what that gave me is a greater opportunity once I learnt this to go even deeper with it, because I realised, well, it's just another vehicle that can help you get to the same place, right? So using hypnosis, you can get there faster. NLP as well. Once you have that energy work as well, they all work together, and so it just gave me a bigger toolbox, I guess, to be able to help people to get the results even faster. So, I think that's definitely the first point. If you want to get there fast, start with NLP or hypnosis or both. Do both, and that's going to start you on that pathway, and then build on that. But that's going to give you a really great basis.
Why would somebody choose to go with someone like a coach or someone who has access to hypnosis and NLP rather than going to a psychologist or a counsellor?
Well, psychologists traditionally, their methodologies is, like if we take the onion analogy, they're about, okay, let's, work with the person to take one layer off the onion, right? And okay, then we're going to spend more time with them, take another layer off, and eventually they get down to some of the core issues. What hypnosis does, it goes straight to the center. Right? You don't have to take one layer off. It just goes straight to the core issue, deals with it, and then it's done. Right? So it's so much more faster. And I've trained doctors and psychologists. So, they're coming from a good place to try and help and make a difference. But there are so many tools out there like NLP or hypnosis that will get you there so much faster. And you got to think, Dr. Richard Bandler, who was my teacher, who came up with NLP and things, he spent time at a psychiatrist's house, and that's where he was going through all these books going, this stuff, that doesn't work, or this can be done a lot faster. And he worked out, he's actually a mathematician. He worked out mathematically how to get these results better, and then tested it out. And that was the basis of NLP, because it was a mathematical formula. And so he was able to get the results so much faster. And one of the reasons NLP got a bad rap at the very start by all the psychologists and psychologists was because what they could fix in 10 minutes with some NLP would take 2 years with a psychologist. And well, that means that psychologist is going to miss out on getting paid for 2 years worth of consulting or therapy work, as opposed to someone fixing that person in 10 minutes. And that's certainly been the case for me over the years of stuff that I've done. Yeah. I've had clients come to me that have been in therapy for 3 and 4 years, and in one session, they no longer need the drugs that they've been given or to be in therapy. But that's the power of hypnosis. So.
Yeah. So then how would something like hypnosis stack up against something like breath work?
It'd be just an add-on that would help. Like, they all have their own, the breath work. I haven't done any specific training on breath work. So from what I know of it, though, it's putting you into an altered state because of the breath work you're doing, right? But that's what hypnosis is an altered state, putting you into a more awareness to be able to get the results faster. So it's probably doing a similar thing through what it does. I just found that, the hypnosis has been around for centuries and been studied. It's the core that, Dr. Richard Bandler uses hypnosis as well as the NLP that he created because it gets faster results. And so that's what the path I went down. And so I really can't comment any more than that. But I'm sure it would be a huge help. Because it's helping you get into an altered state, and obviously the breathing is such an important part of everything.
Yeah.
So meditation puts you in an altered state because you're breathing differently and things. So I think anything like that is all helpful and just going to be positive anyway.
How much of your work now consists of working with students and training them and investing your energy into that?
Now, most of our hypnosis work we do through our Success Library. So people get access to that, and I have a monthly call on there. They can ask questions and stuff, so they get access through that. I've stopped training now people I license people or certify them as clinical hypnotists and with all those skill sets, but I've sort of stopped doing that now. I've trained a heap of people as it is, and but it's something I thought, well, I still know how important that is for people, so we put the library together. People get access to the tools and resources. And then I still do it, obviously, certain consulting with certain people, one-on-one, and then we have our mentoring group, the Entrepreneurs Inner Circle. So that obviously we do mindset stuff in that as well as business stuff. So that's pretty much what we do now.
And what gives you the most juice now? Why don't you work with so many clients from that perspective, and why have you invested your time in other things?
Well, it was really just, for me, it was more timing. Like as far as, at this stage of my life, obviously wanting to spend more quality time with family and travel and doing different things. So it was like, but still wanted to make a huge impact on people's lives. So we thought, well, how can I still do that, but free up my time? Because doing those one-on-ones or whatever then takes a huge amount of time. And so I wanted to reach more people. So we put the Success Library together so that it could reach hundreds of thousands of people essentially, without it taking up my time. But they're still getting the best of me because it's recorded and they're getting the results, from the recordings we've put together. So that was really just a time leverage point for me.
Where it's edging towards the end of the podcast. For today's episode anyway, I'd love to get you back because it's just been phenomenal. I'm sure there's so many other things that we could talk about. What would you say, and we may have already touched on it, but whatever comes to mind first, what would you say the biggest or one of the biggest lessons that you've learned across all of the stuff that you've done, the countries that you've travelled, stages that you've spoken on, people that you've spoken to, what stands out for you in terms of lessons or what you've extrapolated from this life?
Listen to your own intuition and give to yourself first, so making you a priority, that you're working on your own mindset, and that you can work on your own self-love. Because I think if you can have love on the inside for yourself, then you're able to give unconditionally outside to other people, because you're filled up yourself, right? If you're not filled up yourself, then you end up being more of a drain, and you can't give to others because you haven't got enough to give, right? So you need to fill up your own internal tanks first, because then you can give unconditionally and make a bigger difference. But it comes back to working on you first.
And working on you would tie directly into this idea of investing into yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, make yourself the number one investment.
What's the cost of not investing into yourself? Yeah,
well, it's huge. It's the opportunity cost, and there's a cost of inaction. Not doing that is actually going to cost you dearly long term. From a health mindset point of view, wealth point of view. So, if I was to give one tip to anyone that is listening to this, it's get on board with whatever Peachy's doing as far as mentoring or coaching, because having somebody that comes from a loving space, caring space, that actually wants to make a difference is who you need to be hanging out with. And they will help you work on your mindset, work on the things that are going to make the biggest impact and driver on your life and your health, wealth and success.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. I'm so grateful that I could have you on and spend so much time with you. What a chat. I can't wait to listen to that again. And thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Oh, mate, that was unreal. Good stuff.
Okay, good.